They think I'm crazy. I think blockchain has an extremely bad reputation.
Yeah.
Which is partly well-deserved. You need a lot more customers. And the customers, they want things which are easy to use. If not, the developers are not coming.
The launch team wishes you good luck and Godspeed.
Space Monkeys, blasting off with Pierre Aubert. He is the VP of Engineering of Parity, a new member of the team. We're very lucky to have him on the show with us. Pierre?
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me.
It's very nice to have you here. We're here in the Web3 office, but you work with Parity.
Yeah, I joined 2 months ago.
Where did you come from?
I come from Google, where I was managing an SRE team. SRE has a set of engineers at Google which are running things. Mm-hmm. And in my case, I was running the compute part of Google, all the computers together.
Were you managing this global network, or what were you doing?
So I was managing the computers themselves.
Okay.
So the goal of Borg, this system, is to put all the machine together. And from an engineer point of view, it's just like one big computer that can never break. And the name Borg is coming obviously from Star Trek, where, the computer can still continue to work when 60% of it is working. And that's what Borg is doing.
Is this like a code name, or was this the official name?
It's the official name.
Very nice. So were you looking for a new job, or did Parity find you?
A mix of both.
Yeah.
So I was looking for a new job, but not maybe it was not urgent. Let's put it that way. So I was looking for something that would be close to what I know in terms of infrastructure. So a blockchain, it's infrastructure as a service, and that's very close to what I was doing before.
Yeah.
But I was looking for a smaller company where I could have more impact on the product and where it's going, because Google is a super large company. So even if you are doing a lot of things, you are just one person in a super large project doing one thing.
Yeah.
You don't have a direct influence on things. And the third thing I wanted is something with a mission. And I like the Polkadot vision. I realize it's not something that will work today or tomorrow, but it may one day. And this part was super interesting to me.
What's the part of the vision that most interests you?
I think the decentralized part, the unstoppable part, is super nice. How it will work in practice, I don't know yet. But I like this idea of having something which is not controlled, or which is difficult to control, or where the rules are open, the OpenGov mechanism is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And the system has advanced quite a lot, but it's still far from the vision because it's still complicated to use, and the number of use cases you can imagine around a blockchain are limited.
Yeah. What's the folly of centralization that maybe you saw in your previous work?
So I think it depends a lot of the country you are in. If you are in a democratic country, it's not that much of a problem.
Right.
Even a big company like Google, they will do the right thing because it's in their own interest. They are super unlikely to cheat on you or to look at your data or whatever, because the value for them of doing so is very little.
Yeah.
So they are super unlikely to do it. But if you are, I don't know, in China or in various countries where things are less clear or less democratic, then there is a lot of value.
Had you known about blockchain before you started at Parity, or are you learning quick?
More learning quick. I knew nothing. I did so.
Wow.
I met Parity a bit randomly. And someone told me, read the paper from Gav, so I did.
The white paper?
Yes, white paper.
Yeah.
And I like it because it was not that far away from what I was doing before. I used to work in distributed databases, for example, and that's kind of the same problem.
Yeah.
So on one side, it's super far away from what I was doing before. Before, things was much more organized. Now it's a bit like chaos world. But at the same time, there is a vision, there is a product. And my goal, I think, at least medium term, is to do whatever we have to do such that Polkadot gets closer to the vision.
Well, speaking of this chaotic time, you came 2 months ago. 2 weeks ago from recording this interview, we had this big decentralization of Parity. A lot of employees are going to stop working with Parity. I think some of the engineering team as well, but not as much.
Not as much, no.
Okay. So how are you dealing with this shakeup?
So that came as a big surprise for me. At the same time, it's part of the job of the manager to organize things.
Yeah.
So I try not to think too much about the past. In this case, it's relatively easy because I was not there, so I don't feel at all responsible for what happened before. And now I am trying to find an organization that would fit most people, such that we can be more efficient in the future. So on the philosophical part, I understand why we want to decentralize. I don't know yet if it's the best solution in practice, but let's try. And now that it's decided, I am trying to make it work.
Right.
So on the engineering side, it's kind of like a good move for me personally, because the organization, like Parity itself, will be simpler and more focused on engineering.
Yeah.
So that's less people to talk to and to negotiate with. So I think my job will be easier in practice. So we focus the company on a few engineering goals. That will make it easier because there are fewer goals and they are much clearer, I think, than the previous Parity vision. The second thing which I think is nice is a lot of these teams are going into the ecosystem, and from the ecosystem, they both decrease the power of Parity over Polkadot, and that goes into a reasonable direction for the decentralization part.
Yeah.
And of course, that life will be harder in the ecosystem for some people. So it's not an easy move. Huh?
No.
On the engineering side, I think we have made progress recently because we have good idea about what we want to do. So part of the team will be working on the new services that Gav wants to build. So the whatever you want to call it. I'm sure that's not the right name, but Parity V2 or Polkadot V2 or...
So you're speaking Coretime,
Coretime and Coreplay.
Coreplay, yeah.
So there are new cool technologies that will come in 1 year or two. It's not yet completely clear how that will look like or how it will work, but I see the potential.
Yeah.
It's an actor model, if you know what it is, which is very close to traditional actor model. So for people, it will be much easier to reason about the system because that's something they know. That looks like very much Erlang as a programming system.
Right.
And the other part we want to do is because we are this, I think, very cool technology, but it's hard to use. So most of the roadmap, at least for the next 6 months, is to implement a few features which are missing in the current Polkadot offer.
Okay.
So agile Coretime, for example.
Yeah.
And to make the system easier to use. So we are starting a set of iteration with the current customers to understand what do they want, what would make the system easy to use, cheaper, faster, what really matters, so we understand where we should focus our energy in the next 6 months.
When you say customers, who are you referring to?
Developers, whoever is using Polkadot.
Okay, so you're talking about developers and builders.
Yes.
So we want to make the developer experience easier.
Yes.
Right now
it's customer. They're not paying for the system. But
yes, I understand. Well, in a way.
In a way. And they're users. So the idea is to keep the cool technology we have, but make it easier to use.
Right. The developer experience so far has been difficult.
So I think it depends for what.
Okay.
So on the web part, between the Lite client and Polkadot.js, there is a new offer coming, something called Polkadot API, that is supposed to replace the previous API, which is deprecated, and propose something new. If we do that well, that should be easier for web developers.
Okay.
For people building dashboards, for example, that should be much easier to do.
Great.
Still to be proven, but we are going in the right direction. On the smart contract side with Ink, we are putting a fair amount of resources on Ink, to try to make things easier for developers. And the third area is to remove the parachain, or not the parachain, but the complicated auction system.
Yeah.
And replace that either with bug Coretime or agile Coretime.
Yep.
And both of them should make the life of developer easier. From previous survey, we know that there is a few things that people want to change. They would like, for example, the weight system to be easier. And that's a complicated question. So I'm not sure they will get everything they want from version 1.
Okay.
So basically, engineering has 3 goals, make it easier for developers, implement the feature which are missing from Polkadot 1. I forgot to mention one big one, which is the bridges.
Yeah.
So bridges are coming real soon now, just after Christmas.
Is it a focus? The bridges are a focus? We've been waiting a long time for the bridges, yeah.
And I think they are really important. I don't understand yet how they work exactly, but people are telling me that the bridges are secure, and that's the first. So Polkadot will have the first really secure bridge between Ethereum and Polkadot and Kusama and Polkadot. And that makes a lot of sense.
Huge, yeah.
And after that, after these first 6 months, I don't know yet.
Okay.
It's not built yet. Nobody knows.
That's okay. It sounds like a full 6 months, actually.
Yes, there is a lot of things to do. I'm not sure we can deliver all of that, as always, but at least that's the roadmap for now.
Beautiful. What did you hear about the auction system? What did people tell you about what worked and what didn't work?
So it works, but what people complain about, it's expensive.
Yeah.
It's very easy to shoot yourself in the foot.
Yes.
You can break your own chain and these kind of things.
Yeah.
But that's a usability issue. So I think one of the things we can do is to make that cheaper and much, much easier. If you still want to go full parachain, that will stay complicated, I think.
Okay. And as far as vision goes, you've spoken a lot about vision we've heard from Gav and other core developers. Would you say that this is your role at Parity, to take these visions and make them a reality, make them work? Or do you also have some of your own ideas that you'd like to?
So not yet. Knowing myself in, 18 months, when I will understand how the system is working, I will start to have a lot of ideas.
Good.
Because it has happened in the past in all the job I had.
Yeah.
But because the system is complicated, it will take some time before I am confident enough or I understand enough of the details to make propositions.
Sure.
I am usually good at mixing the business side, the developer side, and the product side. So possibly I will have a lot of ideas later, but that's too early.
Okay.
So you are correct. For now, the job is more to take the input from Basti, Gav, and the others, and structure and organize the team such that we can deliver that. So that's also new to Parity, where the development model has been very chaotic in the past. Yeah. So I am trying to bring some of the good things from larger companies and to improve predictability.
Fantastic. You've spoken with Gav? You've met with Gav?
Yes.
Okay. How do you think you and your personality, your mode of working fits in with his?
So I have not met Gav 20 times, a few times.
Sure.
So my view is very good at thinking about what technologies a network need, but that's a long-term vision. I am super pragmatic and I like small steps. So I want to build things step after step so we go into the right direction. I'm usually good at that. So the idea is to have reasonable objective, for example, deliver the bridges on time in Q1, deliver agile Coretime in Q1 and not at the end of next year. And how can we get organized so that we do that?
Right.
So I don't want to control everything, but I would the key topics, the key things we want to do next year to be clear. And I would like to be delivered more or less on time.
Great.
There is a lot of unknown, so let's see how it goes. But when we are in full chaos mode, because people are leaving, people are joining, team are reorganized, I know the value of doing small steps and telling people, hey, here is what we need to do. And then people are autonomous, so they will do it by themselves. I just try to focus all the organization on a few goals and get that delivered.
What exactly do you define as the scope of your authority here? Because you have the engineers who are employed by Parity, but then we also have the fellowship, which is made up of some Parity engineers and some outside engineers. Then we also have people, building the parachains, and sometimes the parachains need core technology to change. How do you align all these groups together?
So there are multiple ways of doing it, and I think it depends on the problem we want to fix. If you think at the parachain as a product, maybe what developers want could be unified into a set of features that are useful to a lot of people, and then we could build it. If it's features just for one parachain, then likely no. The degree of autonomy of the fellowship is not yet clear to me at the moment. I think it's very Parity-centered, but maybe not. And it would be good in the future if there is less people from Parity. I don't think right now that's a problem. I think right now there is enough features inside Polkadot. What is missing is this easy to access, good documentation, good testing systems, to make the life of people easier. What are the features we need later is a bit less clear. And like if the governance come up with features they want and we can implement them, that's not a problem. I have not yet seen like this, like high-level agreement. Like if it's easy features, I think everybody agree with them and that's an easy case. If that looks like a stupid feature, everybody disagree and that's easy.
Yeah.
And like that's the in-between, which is not that clear.
Right.
One of the things I believe we will be working on at the end of next year is how to move from Polkadot 1 to Polkadot 2. Like I would like that to be as transparent as possible for like the various developers.
Okay.
Like for example, for Ink, we plan to make it compatible with CorePlay. So for the users, they will have nothing to do. That will be transparent to them. For Parachain, I don't think it is possible to make it fully transparent.
Okay.
But like we will have a migration plan or whatever.
What do you mean by transparent in this context?
But it would be great if the current Parachain could use CorePlay out of the box. But that looks unlikely.
Well, I guess it's a different economic model for one, right?
Yes. Plus the technology stack is fairly different.
Tricky, okay.
Tricky, but at the same time, if there is no easy path to migrate and people don't see the value of CorePlay, then they should be able to stay where they are and the system will be supported for years.
Including the auction and lease system?
No.
No.
So I think the auction will go.
Yeah, right.
But before they can go, we need to be sure that Agile Coretime and Bulk Coretime are working well. And when they are, and if there is no demand for the old system, then the old system will go away. But that could be a good example where OpenGov could decide if yes or not we should keep this kind of like old system.
Well, that would be a very interesting referendum. That'll be some interesting discourse.
That's why the governance is useful. It's because it takes a decision like in the hand of people that are in charge of it. Like they are in charge and they are both accountable and like responsible for the system.
Yeah.
So if they take the decision, they take the decision. I mean, if you want to maintain multiple generation of the API, that will cost a lot more. And that means less feature velocity for the new features. So there is a trade-off between like maintaining the system and like building new things for the same amount of people at least.
So we need to make it attractive for people to move with us.
Yes, and I think they will.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I think people want to move. Yeah. One thing that I suppose is not concerning, but, well, it is a little bit concerning to me is in the old Parity model, we had some customers. One that comes to mind is Mythical. They were particularly working with Parity to engineer this kind of super chain idea, something that they particularly needed for their use case. Are these customers receiving focus still under this new structure?
So for all of them, I don't know, but Mythical does.
Mythical does. Good. Okay.
They have a good use case.
Great. Yeah.
So this one we are supporting. It's a bit harder to see if the previous team called BD.
Yeah.
So BD is moving into the ecosystem to become his own entity. And I think they are likely to be successful. First, because they have a good leader. And two, because they have a business model from the get-go.
Who's leading the BD team on?
Gutam.
Okay.
And they have a business model. Like they are a company integrating, helping people to integrate on Polkadot, and they sell that for a service. So that's a reasonable like business line.
Yeah.
And I think that will work.
Very good. So you mentioned governance a few times. Do you have time to pay attention to the governance that's happening right now? Okay.
No,
what have you heard? What have you heard about?
I have heard that some things are working well and some are not. That's true for the Treasury too.
Yeah.
So I have heard two things. The first one is not that many people pay attention. So in practice, the amount of people who are voting is a small fraction of the total amount of dots. So that means the representation of dot holder is not great. The second thing is, I don't know who is voting, but like there will be tough decisions to take, which are more like strategic and not tactical. And I'm not sure the Treasury is the right place for that, for example. Like some people will come and ask for a lot of money on bets, like ideas which are not obvious. And if we tell them no, they will never happen. So the question is, how do we fund the innovation, like things which are very risky?
Right.
And we will need to see how risk adverse the Treasury is. And maybe we need two systems, one for like financing like medium-sized activity and another one to finance long-term activities.
Yeah.
Parity, I think, can finance some of the long-term one. I think the Coreplay is a good example. It's a new idea, it's different, it's a lot of investments, and it doesn't have a quick return of investment.
Right.
So that's something Parity could finance.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see how the governance is working in practice. I would love people to be more involved.
Yeah, of course. Me too.
But that's difficult because the questions are technical. So you need to know the ecosystem. That means, I don't know, if you're a bank holding a lot amount of dollars, you don't know, so you don't vote.
Yeah, part of it is this idea of delegation as well. I mean, not everybody has time or the expertise, but we do have this option where you can give your voting power to other people.
Yes, but in this case, you need to be careful that we don't have, or we need to have a fair amount of like voters. Even if the voters represent other people, like if the set of people which are technically knowledgeable is very small, it's not really OpenGov.
Do you think, if you speak about a bank, do you see a Polkadot in the future that has a lot more big players using up block space? Like, I remember when I first joined the ecosystem, we were talking about banks and nations and energy companies, but now we're speaking about individual developers, appealing to them. So how broad do you see this customer base?
It's just my point of view, but my point of view is we should also cater to these super large companies because they bring credibility.
Right.
And if we don't have the credibility, it will be hard to move into, for example, the DeFi space. There are two things which I believe are missing. One is like these large companies, they need certified environment to work with.
Of course.
I don't know if you want to do, because they are regulated.
Yeah.
So that's not an open question for them. If you want to do payment, you need to be PCI DSS compliant or whatever kind of regulations they have.
Right.
And we are not yet there. And they're also like difficult to work with because you need to invest for years before you build prototypes and you try to build an application that makes sense. Should we focus on them or not? A bit, like 50%? I don't know yet. That's an open question.
I see.
I think a fair amount of people, especially like the OGs, they would like the system to be more used. And they realize that building new feature is not the way to do it.
Right.
Or at least we need a compromise between building new features, which are super useful, like Agile Coretime.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we need to make the system easy to use. If not, the developers are not coming. So I think there is a good agreement on that. And that's new and positive. We don't need that many new features.
No.
We already the most advanced kind of like a blockchain. But we need a lot more customers. And the customers, they want things which are easy to use. That's true everywhere.
Have you been picking up ideas about other blockchain architectures and ecosystems?
Yes, I start to, but like the level of understanding I have is limited, so I'm not completely sure I get it.
Right, okay.
Well, I see the difference between rollups and like blockchain.
It's so exciting to just be getting into blockchain, right? Doesn't it just feel so vast and bottomless?
I like it. I like the fact it's not something I have done before.
Yeah.
Because I get bored like pretty easily.
Okay.
So if I do the same thing over and over, it gets boring, and I don't want that. So I have a steep learning curve in front of me, and I like it.
Very nice. When you speak to your friends from your old business, and you're trying to explain to them the potential of the technology you're working on now, what do you tell them?
They think I'm crazy.
Really?
I think blockchain has an extremely bad reputation.
Yeah, right.
Which is partly well-deserved. I think a lot of people see the potential, but they don't understand how to go from where we are to where we should be. And because the promise has been like for 15 years, a lot of people start to think it will never work.
Yeah.
I'm less pessimistic. I think it can work.
Absolutely can. Okay, well, Pierre, it's been very nice having you in here. Nice to meet you, get to know you. It's really great to have somebody come from the outside, land in the chaos, and start to create some order out of it.
Okay, we will see in 1 year if I am successful.
Okay, well, Bridges, Agile, Coretime, these are your main focuses over the next 3 or 4 months. Let's catch up in 12 months and see where you are.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.